Welcome. Here is a rundown of war in Ukraine. How has the war in Ukraine developed over 10 months? Former Director General of the Royal United Services Institute, RUSI, Michael Clarke, has been providing his analysis of the crisis in Ukraine, which is now in its 10th month. The defense and security expert told that on March 2, Russian forces were making progress in the south as they were coming from the Russian-annexed region of Crimea. In the same month, Russian forces tried and failed to seize Hostomel Airport, northwest of Kyiv. Then, on March 31, the seizure of Kyiv had failed and Kherson was the only city that Russian forces had taken, Mr. Clarke said. By July 3, the Russians had taken Severodonetsk after 100 days of attack and took Lysychansk in the eastern flank of the country. This was the high watermark of their advance in the Donbass, Mr. Clarke said. And on November 12, Ukrainian troops were able to retake the city of Kherson. Mr. Clarke added, the Ukrainians didn't have to fight for Kherson and Russians therefore pretend it was not really a defeat, but it was a tremendous defeat. It was the only city of any importance that they had. The defense expert also said that Vladimir Putin was appalled by the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 and never accepted that Ukraine could be an independent country. He said that the Russian leader thought it was a catastrophe that the Soviet Union had broken up and thought it was Ukraine that had effectively broken up the Soviet Union. He said, it was their demand for independence and that created the momentum to break up the rest. He never forgave them for that. Never accepted that Ukraine could be an independent country, had his own view of Russian history. There was a crisis in 2014 when Ukraine began to lean much too far, he thought, to the European Union. And out of that crisis they occupied Crimea by force. They occupied parts of the Donbass, about a third of it, with these separatist territories. And that gave him the beginnings of a war. In 2022, for a range of other reasons he thought the moment was right. And Brazil's new president calls for peace at meeting with Russian and Ukrainian representatives. Brazilian President-elect Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva called for an end to the war between Ukraine and Russia as he met with representatives of both countries yesterday. Mr. Lula da Silva, who will be sworn in today, said he had separately met with the Speaker of Russia's Federation Council, Valentina Matvienko, and Ukrainian Vice Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko. The two were in Brazil to represent their countries at his inauguration and met both him and his future Foreign Relations Minister, Mauro Vieira. Ahead of his inauguration, Mr. Lula da Silva told Ms. Matvienko that Brazil wished for peace and for the parties to find common ground to end the conflict. In Brazil, we have a tradition of defending the integrity of nations and we are going to talk to whoever is possible for peace, Mr. Lula da Silva said.